I bought that land because I wanted peace, and the joke was, peace took one look at me and kept driving. Instead, I got an HOA president with a God complex, forged county records, fake environmental complaints, and one midnight raid by grown men dressed like budget SWAT. I spent 28 years with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and somehow retirement still turned into the strangest operation of my life. The first time I saw the property, most people would have called it abandoned and kept moving. The gate sagged on rusted hinges, the barn roof looked crushed flat, and the wind moved through the grass with that dry, hollow sound that makes a place feel older than memory. No cell signal unless you stood on a rock and held your phone toward the sky. Me. I loved it. 5,000 acres of silence, a creek on the western edge, mineral rights, and a private easement cutting past the fancy gates of Elk Hollow Preserve straight to my ridge. After years of meetings, politics, and suburbs swallowing open land inch by inch, it felt like breathing again. I bought the place at a federal auction for less than some of those Elk Hollow people probably spend on landscaping. Their HOA dues alone could fund a library. Mine were zero, because my land was not in their association, and never had been. I moved in with my dog, Scout, a 12-year-old blue heeler with better instincts than most public officials. I fixed up the old foreman's cabin, added solar, a generator, and a satellite link, and for about 2 days it felt like the quiet life I'd earned. Then the sheriff showed up. 2 deputies stepped out and said they'd gotten a report of unlawful occupation and illegal construction. I handed over my deed, easement records, auction paperwork, county maps, all neat in a folder because when you live near entitled people, evidence becomes a household item. They found nothing. On the way out, the older deputy handed me a letter from Heidi Tronger, president of the Elk Hollow HOA. It said any unapproved activity within visual proximity of their boundary would be treated as a violation of community code. On my land. I burned that letter in the fire pit that night, and Scout celebrated by peeing on a cactus. For a few days, things stayed quiet. I worked the water line, reinforced the corral, mounted trail cameras. Then one dawn, hauling lumber in from town, I hit the north access road and found 2 concrete barriers dropped across the easement with a fresh sign bolted between them. Private road, Elk Hollow Preserve, NO through access. That road wasn't theirs. It had been under federal administration since Eisenhower. Back at the cabin, I pulled county records and found something that made my stomach turn. Somebody had filed a temporary management agreement giving Elk Hollow control over that road pending county review. Fresh signatures. One belonged to a deputy clerk I'd never heard of. The other belonged to Randall Hobbs, a former county surveyor who had left office months earlier and was now in Portugal running kayak tours. I drove into town, got stonewalled at the assessor's office, and by afternoon the HOA had left me a voicemail about maintenance and mounted cameras near my gate like I was the criminal. Then came the lawsuit. Somebody left a court packet wedged in my gate accusing me of occupying land that had supposedly been sold into private ownership by clerical error. According to Elk Hollow, my ranch was actually part of an ecological buffer tied to their preserve. Not the county saying that. Not the state. The HOA. Buried in the exhibits was Randall Hobbs's digital signature again, blessing the lie like a ghost with Wi-Fi. The same day, the Wyoming Department of Environmental Protection sent me an urgent notice ordering all work stopped because of alleged violations. Based on a complaint filed under my own name, my parcel number, and my email address. They had spoofed me to report myself. That was the week it turned ugly. Deliveries froze. Vendors backed out. Contractors got nervous. Anonymous flyers appeared around town. Environmental threat or squatter problem. People started looking at me like I was contagious. That's when I realized they were never trying to beat me in court. They were trying to wear me down until I left on my own. That was the point I stopped reacting and started hunting. I built a binder thick enough to stun cattle with every filing, screenshot, metadata trail, fake complaint, parcel map, and forged signature. Then I drove into town and called in an old favor. James Lowry, the county prosecutor, and I had crossed paths years earlier on a wildlife contamination case. He took one look at my binder, listened for 10 minutes, and the amusement drained out of his face. He put me in a room with his IT forensics guy, Marcus. Marcus pulled apart the county PDFs, traced timestamps, checked edit logs, and inside 20 minutes found the rot. The county records hadn't been updated through county systems at all. They'd been injected through a mirror server tied to Elk Hollow. That's criminal fraud, James said. And then came the twist that changed everything. A friend connected me with Sarah Esteban, a young investigative reporter already digging into corruption in privatized HOA communities across the Mountain West. She came out to the ranch with a camera and a notepad. I walked her through the barricades, the easement records, and the fake filings. Before she left, she'd already started filing records requests. My private war had just become public. Still, I knew people like Heidi don't retreat when they start losing. They escalate. A few nights later, just before 1 a.m, scouts started growling. I grabbed the thermal scope and scanned the southern fence. For figures, moving slow and organized near the old cattle pen. One had bolt cutters. One had a camera. When I hit the floodlights, they froze. Then one stepped forward with a megaphone and announced they were conducting a community oversight inspection under Section 7 of Elk Hollow Code. Section 7. On my property. At 1 a.m. They were wearing black jackets with HOA patches like some knockoff militia. One moved toward the gate. Another aimed a camera at my cabin. I launched the drone cams, locked the place down, and called the sheriff. Through the live feed on my phone, I watched one idiot start cutting my lock while a drone hovered over his face in red infrared. Scout barked once, sharp enough to split the dark, and 2 of them broke. The rest didn't get far. Deputies rolled in, cuffed 2, detained a 3rd, and collected the gear they dropped: bolt cutters, fake inspection forms, night vision goggles, and an aerial map of my property with handwritten notes about blind spots and access points. One of the men turned out to be Noah Brady, son of the HOA's legal counsel. By sunrise, Sarah had the footage. By 7, it was online. The video exploded. Local papers grabbed it, then regional outlets, then national producers came calling. The country saw exactly what Elk Hollow was. Not a tidy little community defending property values, but a machine using paperwork, reputation, and intimidation like weapons. Once the light hit them, they unraveled fast. Their website went down. Their spokesman started issuing shaky denials. James got a warrant. The sheriff raided the HOA office, boxed up servers, seized laptops, took files, cracked open a safe. Inside were strategy memos with names like Phase 2 Pressure Response and Narrative Reclaim Protocol. Internal emails talked openly about removing me by any legal means or credible emergency. Marcus tied the forged zoning records, the fake environmental complaint, and the road filing to a workstation inside the HOA office. They had lifted Randall Hobbs's signature from an old document and pasted it into new fraud. They had even mocked up a fake federal email thread to make the land auction look invalid. And the fake federal email was in Comic Sans. The town council hearing after that felt less like a meeting and more like a public autopsy. James laid out the whole scheme: forged records, spoofed complaints, illegal surveillance, the raid, the internal memos, all of it. Heidi sat in the front row rigid as granite, while her lawyer tried to call it a misunderstanding. The real ending came at dawn. No sirens, no shouting, just sheriff's cruisers, a black SUV with federal plates, and an evidence van rolling into Elk Hollow like judgment had finally learned the address. From the ridge above my place, coffee in hand, scout beside me, I watched Heidi Tronger get arrested at the wrought iron gates of her precious clubhouse. It wasn't just her. Charges landed hard: forgery of public records, conspiracy, obstruction, impersonation of regulatory authority, trespass, fraudulent interference with zoning procedure, and more. The HOA board got gutted, their authority suspended, then moved toward dissolution. The barricades came down. My title was reaffirmed clean and clear. The state lifted every restriction. The county apologized. Contractors came back. Deliveries resumed. Then the civil judgment hit. Full ruling in my favor, damages awarded, Elk Hollow fine deep enough to leave a scar. I didn't keep the restitution for myself. By then I already had what I wanted: my land, my name, my peace. I asked the court to direct it toward county records modernization and wildlife preservation around the ridge. Figure if those people were going to spend that much energy trying to steal open land, the least they could do was help protect some of it after they lost. The strange part came after. Residents who'd watched me get smeared started showing up at my gate with awkward apologies and beer. One guy handed me a 6-pack and said he never voted for Heidi. I told him this wasn't an election. Then I took the beer anyway. That whole mess taught me something I wish I'd learned earlier. Power doesn't always come wearing a badge or carrying a gun. Sometimes it shows up in pressed clothes, legal jargon, polished newsletters, and the smug smile of somebody who thinks rules were invented for other people. And the law, as slow and frustrating as it can be, still matters, because when lies pile up high enough, sooner or later something breaks. Now the ranch is quiet again. Real quiet. Wind through grass, coffee at sunrise, scout asleep by the porch, no fake patrols, no bogus signs, no rich little empire trying to erase me because my fence line offended their view. Justice, when it finally came, didn't sound like thunder. It sounded like barricades being dragged away, handcuffs clicking shut, and a whole lot of people suddenly speaking softer. But here's the part one still think about. How far should anybody be allowed to go in the name of community standards before it becomes organized abuse? And if somebody uses rules, status, and paperwork to try to destroy your life, is fighting back with everything you've got justice? Or just a cleaner kind of revenge? Tell me what you think. Who is right, who crossed the line, and have you ever had somebody use power, policy, or public shame to try to push you out of your own space? Drop your story in the comments.